Ezra Cole wasn't the sort of man folks feared for. He was steady, soft-spoken, and kind in the small ways that counted. He'd fix your gate without asking, bring over eggs when your hens weren't laying, and linger long on the porch long after supper just to talk while the fireflies came up. He wasn't loud or boastful, but people said he had a way of listening that made you the most important person around. Ezra belonged to the land in a way most didn't. He knew when rain was coming by the taste of the air, and he swore he could tell a good harvest just by pressing a handful of soil onto his palm. That's why no one thought much of it at first, when he started slowing. Just the summer heat, they'd figured. But Ezra said his legs felt heavy, like every step was dragging more than his own weight. Yet neighbors saw him pause in the rows, standing stock still, eyes fixed downward as though he was waiting for the earth to speak. Then there was the smell, sharp and damp, clinging to him no matter how clean his clothes. And when Ezra talked close, you can catch it on his breath. Not sour like sickness, but deep and loamy, like dirt right after the first rain, and folks pulled back without meaning to. They'd walk away from him feeling uneasy, like the ground itself had breathed through him. And toward the end, they said he'd hum at night, a low tune with no words rolling across the fields after dark. Some heard it through open windows, thought it was just him keeping himself company. But others swore the sound wasn't carrying out. It was sinking down, fed into the soil itself. The morning they found him, Ezra was laying at the far edge of the hayfield. His eyes were wide open, glossed over, with veins beneath his skin dark and green, raised like vines under stretched cloth. From his arms and ribs, pale filaments had pushed through, wet, hair-thin cords that quivered and nosed into the dirt. His fingers were sunk past the knuckles, buried so deep it looked less like he'd fallen and more like he'd planted himself there. And when they tried dragging him free, the ground refused. His back had already given to it, flesh stitched into the soil by root-like cords spoiled out from his spine. And some swore the field rose and fell with his chest, like the land itself was using him to draw breath. And that night, when the crickets went quiet, the hum came again, low, patient, and rumbling through the deep furrows like thunder buried deep. Folks said they could still hear Ezra in it, faint and hollow, not crying for help, but humming with whatever had taken him. They say the earth don't forget a body once it's taken. Ezra Cole wasn't the first, and he won't be the last. Across farmlands and river-bottom fields, there are stories whispered of men found half swallowed, flesh threaded with pale cords, their backs stitched to the soil. Most folks laugh it off as ghost talk, a tale to keep children from wandering out past dark. But some places hold on to stories harder than others. Places where the wind dies sudden, where the ground feels heavier underfoot, where the air carries a smell sharp as wet dirt. The rootbound starts by creeping. First the weight in the limbs, then the breath that smells like earth, then the hum, low and steady, like the body itself is singing back to the soil. And by the time a man lies down and the ground won't let him rise, it's too late to call it folklore. They've named it many things: the green maw, Earth's claim, the harvest curse, each a warning dressed up as a story. But strip the names away and you're left with the same truth. Once the ground has hold, there's no pulling free. Ask 10 folks where the rootbound begins and you'll hear 10 different warnings. Some will tell you it waits in the low places of the field, where the rainwater sits too long and the ground never quite dries. Others say it clings to the stumps of old crops, hiding in the roots left rotten after a harvest. A few whisper it drifts from barns long abandoned, creeping up through the floorboards where the soil's gone sour. There's those who swear it slips in through the feet, bare soles pressing to damp ground, letting the earth climb up through the blood. And others believe it rides the breath, carried in the dust that hangs thick over cut hay. Some say you don't have to touch it at all. Just linger too long, rest too heavy on the dirt, and it'll notice you. Most laugh it off as country talk, stories passed down with no more weight than a scarecrow's shadow. But when you lay all those tellings side by side, a pattern starts to show, and the rootbound don't take men from the streets or kitchens. It waits in places close to the soil, damp and quiet. where the air carries the smell of earth. Whatever the truth of how it enters, the old rule still holds. Keep moving. Don't linger in the fields gone still, and don't sleep on bare ground. And if your breath ever carries the taste of dirt, sharp, loamy, heavy on the tongue, it means the land's already begun its claim. And the rootbound don't take quick. It moves slow, settling into the body the way damp seeps into wood. First comes a heaviness, a drag in the legs, muscles drawn tight like the carrying stones. Men think it's just weariness, the toll of long hours in the fields. But the weight never lifts. Then comes the breath, sharp, damp, and wrong. Not foul like rot, but earthy, a loamy stink like rain hitting fresh dug soil. Some say you can taste it on your own tongue when you stand too close. Same grit you'd feel if you bit down on roots. Green shadows follow soon after, veins gone dark beneath the skin. They rise like cords, standing high along the arms and neck, pulsing faint under flesh. And the body grows restless, caught between moving and stillness, wandering the fields at night, humming low as if answering to something buried beneath the rows. And then comes the compulsions. Victims feel it first as a tug, and then as a demand. They can't rest indoors. They can't stay in bed. Instead, they drift outside, drawn by a pull they can't name, to open ground. They press themselves flat against the damp soil, cheek to earth, arms spread wide like the laying down to be received. Some are found with fingernails clawed bloody where they tried to fight it, but the pull always wins, and the land takes them down gentle, patient, and inevitably. And by the time the roots break through, there's no mistaking it. Pale filaments push outward from the arms, the chest, the soft hollows of the body. They glisten, wet, quivering like they're searching. Some bury straight back into the skin, stitching the host tight while others nose into the dirt, anchoring fast. And death comes slow. The lungs stiffen first, the cords piercing through until breath rattles like wind through a cracked floorboard. Then the chest caves inward, body held fast by ropes of white tissue drawn into the earth. And victims are left half buried, back sunk deep, fingers locked in the soil like claws. And when the heart stops, the body don't rest clean. The filaments keep growing, spreading outward through soil, feeding off what remains. And by morning, the dead look less like men and more like scarecrows rotted in place. Husks laced with pale cords, their mouths still open to the sky. The rootbound lives close to the ground. It don't drift in open air nor spread in crowded towns. It favors soil that stays damp, heavy with rot, low fields where rainwater lingers, shaded edges of woods where runoff gathers, river bottom earth dark as coal, places where the ground never fully dries. And those claimed by it serve as more than victims. They're anchors. Once a man is taken, the body don't return to dust the way it should. And the filaments that stitch him down keep growing. After his last breath, sinking deep, braiding through the soul. They feed on the rot of his flesh first, then spread outward, knitting themselves into the roots of plants and fibers of old crops left behind. That's why fields touched by it don't grow clean. Corn sprouts twisted, their stalks splintering into pale cords instead of grain. Beans blackened out the pod, hard and bitter to the taste. Infected soil stays wet long past rain, holding a sour stink like breath from a mouth left open in the dark. The rootbound spreads in patches, field by field, and year by year, tied to the bones it's already claimed. A husk half buried today becomes a knot of white cords by winter, and by spring, the roots reach far enough to meet another. It shows itself strongest in the heat of late summer, when crops are high and the ground is weary with moisture and rot. That's when men grow tired, when the urge to lie down in the field comes hardest, and when the earth seems most willing to take hold. Come winter, it quiets, laying low beneath the frost, patient, waiting for the thaw to wake it again. Animals sense it sooner. Dogs shy from those patches. Cattle circle wide, and no bird will pick seed from soil gone sour. Folks that don't listen to such warnings, folks that work or rest too long on that ground, often end up anchoring the next patch themselves. The stories call it rootbound, but under glass and record it bears another name, cadaverizia, a corpse root, a fitting title, as it makes little distinction between flesh and soil, binding both in the same slow knot. What looks like a single cord, in truth, is a braid. Pale fungal threads form the frame, long and branching, pushing through blood and tissue like roots through wet clay. Entwined along them are colonies of soil-bred bacteria, riding the filaments, leaving behind secretions that bend the body to their purpose. The fungus digs, and the bacteria feeds, and together, they build something neither could do alone. Inside a host, the cords follow the veins. They ride the blood, and they anchor in the lungs, the gut, and the soft hollows of the flesh. The fungus pulls steady from the tissue, while the bacteria twist the body's own chemistry. Their signal whispers of rest, of stillness, until the host is compelled outward, drawn to the soil like a man walking to his own grave. And once the body yields, the growth accelerates. Filaments pierce the skin, nose and outward, glistening wet before they bury into the dirt. The bacteria grow harsher then, breaking tissue down to feed the cords. Ribs are bound, lungs stiffen, spine tethered. The man becomes a scaffold, a frame lashed tight to the earth. In life, Cadaverizia feeds as a parasite, and in death, it grows as a root. The husk left behind becomes the anchor, pale cord spreading outward through soil, seeding patches of ground where it waits quiet for flesh again. In science, they call it an infection, and in folklore, they call it a claim. Both speak of the same truth. Once Cadaverizia has hold, there's no pulling free. You're rootbound, and it don't wait to be invited. It comes through the soil itself. Bare feet pressed into damp ground give it its opening. The first touch feels like nothing, maybe a prickle, maybe an itch. Then the filaments burrow, thin as a hair, pale as milk. They push straight through the skin, wriggling deeper the way worms do. Some victims swore they felt it, a crawling burn under their souls, as though the earth itself was climbing into them. And once inside, the cords ride the blood. They thread along veins, laying pale tracks just beneath the skin, while their bacterial partners trail behind, spitting out secretions that twist the body's own signals. The fungus builds a scaffold and the bacteria write the commands. And together they don't just feed, they take hold. The host grows heavy, but not with tired muscle. It's the cords themselves, dragging on tendon and bone, tethering the body to the weight it can't handle. Breath turns damp, sour with the stink of soil, and worse, the mind begins to bend. The compounds mimic the voice of rest, whisperings of peace, but peace never comes. Instead, there's a pull, a hunger, to lie down on open earth. The beds feel wrong, houses stifle, only the ground will do. And once the body yields, the growth turns ruthless. Filaments spear outward, breach the flesh, glisten wet in the moonlight before burying back into the soil. The bacteria carve the host into fuel, softening the organs, rot made alive again. Ribs catch tight, and lungs collapse. Spine draws flat as cords and lash a man to the dirt. And death don't come clean. Suffocation rattles the chest, slow as a rope drawn taut. And even when the last breath slips, Cadaverizia continues. The husk becomes a root knot, a seed bed, pale cords spread outward through the soil, feeding off what's left, waiting, patient for the next bare foot to cross the ground. And there ain't no doctoring for a rootbound man. Once a man's laid flat and the cords have him, he's gone. Folks don't speak of saving the taken, only keeping the rest of the ground from following. The first answer is fire. Whole fields gone to ash, husks burning till the cords curl and blacken. But fire don't always reach deep enough. In places where the root has sunk down into clay, the earth stays sour, humming low. No matter how bright the flames were, farmers know that land will never be fit again. So the second answer is abandonment. Fence off the patch, mark it so no man wanders near. Some drive stakes and string in tin cans that rattle in the wind. Others hang charms of bone or glass, not for spirits, but for neighbors, a sign that the soil itself is unclean. And over the years, weeds swallow the borders. Houses slump and rot, and the ground takes back what was left. And last defense is the simplest, but also the hardest to follow. Never bare your feet. The old ways of walking the furrows barefoot to read the field's health turn cursed by this sickness. It's through the skin that the earth reaches up, filling its burrows straight into the blood. Boots are a thin armor, but they're all that stands between flesh and soil. And no matter the burnings, no matter the fences, cadaveriza endures. A field thought dead and quiet may stir again when summer grows damp, chords rising through soil like old voices remembered. Containment, in truth, is just a delay, and the ground always keeps what it's given. There are warnings that never fade, no matter how often they're mocked. Don't sleep in the fields, don't linger where the soil stays damp, and don't walk barefoot where the crops are sired. Words passed down like prayer, first whispered to children, then carried into old age. Most folks smile at them now, call them relics of harder times. But the land don't forget, and neither do those who've seen what it keeps. Once cadaveriza takes hold, once you become rootbound, the body no longer belongs to the man. Flesh twists into cord, veins rise like roots, ribs lash themselves into the dirt. And when breath is gone, the work don't stop. The body becomes soil, and the soil becomes a waiting ground. A field that looks quiet at dawn may already be seeded with the memory of those it's claimed. That's why the old words endure. Spoken softer than before, but with no less weight. Keep your boots on, and don't lie down on the earth unless you're ready to stay there. Because the rootbound don't strike like a storm or fever. It waits, patient as stone, until the moment you forget the roll. And then the ground takes you slow, stitch by stitch, until you're part of it forever. I'm Archivist Nixon, so laugh if you want, but listen close before you step into damp soil barefoot. The earth don't just swallow the dead. Sometimes, it comes calling for the living.